We've got Ben Stewart and Ollie Knowles from Led by Donkeys with us this week, the guerrilla poster hangers and satirists who've helped keep our spirits up over the last few months. So you talked about how it started in January. I thought it had been going longer. So did it catch light really, almost instantly?
The first one we put up was David Cameron. That was Ollie and I went out. It was on the A10 in London, actually opposite the Birdcage pub in Stoke Newington, where we came out with the idea. And that did. I remember we walked up to the pub to have a pint after that, and we thought it looked amazing. The visual impact of having a tweet up that big was really good. But we said, look, we have to be prepared to get 7 retweets off this, and no one really care. And 24 hours later, we had sort of 3,000 followers, and we thought we were onto something. So actually, we hadn't planned to do anything for a week, but we went out the next night and did David Davies in Clapton. Then the Sunday, we did Michael Gove in Romford. And then the Tuesday after that, which was the night of the first meaningful vote, where she went down by 202, we did 4 in a night in Dover, the kind of front line of Brexit. And that was the night it took off, didn't it? It just, the next morning when we tweeted out, it just exploded.
Yeah, really huge. I mean, it was a long night. We put up 4 posters. We got Dominic Raab's quote about not understanding the importance of the Dover-Calais crossing.
In Dover.
We decided, even if we get arrested tonight, we're getting that one up. That was the first poster, and so we got that out. Felt really good. And then it was a long night. Finished about 2:00. But I guess by that point we had enough of a following for that material to really fly. And through that week, it really took off, didn't it? And of course, then the crowdfunder came. We had lots of people coming to us saying, "Look, can we give you some money to do more of this?" And we'd been a bit reluctant, but on the back of Dover, it was time to press go on that.
Was any of it sort of, hair raising, whether you're just like worried about kind of, angry Brexiters shaking their fists or the Rozzers?
Yeah, in Dover, actually, it was the first time we'd really kind of got out of London, and it felt very different. I mean, the first thing we noticed when we got out the car was that the streets were just silent. So, there's just not the London noise on the street. So even untying the ladder from the roof rack, we were nervous. Wow. And Dover is Leave country. It's deprived. It was a different place to work. So we were a little nervous about that.
Felt a bit exposed. I mean, there was no denying the fact that we were Remainers doing kind of 18 square metre propaganda posters. We were saying at the time, it felt like we might as well stand there with blue T-shirts with the yellow stars on, singing Ode to Joy. It was pretty obvious what we were doing. But actually, what the second poster we did was on a really high site, about 10 metres up on the side of an MOT centre, and we got up there. We were about 5 minutes from finishing it, and suddenly a guard dog burst through and started yapping at us, which set off the floodlights. So there's this massive whoosh, and we were bathed in light above the Kong Sing Chinese takeaway, and everyone came out to watch us doing it. And that was a bit of a hairy moment, wasn't it?
It was, and I mean, I came to this phrase of kind of owning the space. We talked about looking, official, and we had fluoro jackets on. And I remember being at the top of this ladder and just hoarsely whispering down, "Own the space, own the space. We're going to be fine." And
have you accidentally joined the Gilets jaunes now?
yeah, quite.
Because I first saw your billboards like in the flesh in London's trendy Islington, where I live. But also you're talking about Dover, and obviously they've appeared in Leave areas. How do you kind of, because they seem to have a twin purpose, they kind of fire up Remainers, but also they've got a different effect, kind of pointing at hypocrisy to Leavers in Leave areas. Did you really kind of, once you got going, sort of really strategise the sort of map and where certain posters would work best?
Yeah. I mean, we thought that the Raab Dover poster would work best in Dover, but generally, actually, Led by Donkeys was best understood in the early stage, at least, actually, less as a poster campaign as a local and regional media campaign. What we were doing, we thought, was trying to create political street theatre in Leave areas that would allow local and regional newspapers to report these quotes on our terms. And our analysis, for what it's worth, is that the Remain campaign, I'm not going to slag off the Remain campaign, they had a really difficult job, but hadn't done a particularly good job of creating passion and street theatre in Leave areas. Now, Ollie and I work for Greenpeace, the other two don't, but we are, I guess, experienced that through direct action, creating political street theatre that speeds up the national conversation and allows the media to talk about relatively boring issues in news stories. And that was the whole point of it. If a poster didn't get a local or regional news article attached to it that said, look at what Michael Gove said compared to your observed reality as we go towards the second meaningful vote, then in a sense it hadn't succeeded. So it was a way to kind of hack the local media. We didn't expect it to take off quite, as successfully as it did, to be honest.
Yeah, my my hope with the project is, I mean, I think we've been a morale boost to the Remain campaign, and that's great. A small part played in that. My real hope with the project is that in putting these posters up in Leave areas, we have provided people with an opportunity to really reappraise these politicians' words against the reality which is unfolding. And I think in an information overloaded age where very often you're given this information but you're told how to think, it comes with a long commentary. I hope somewhere, and it's hard to measure, but I hope somewhere that we've created space for people, out walking the dog, out with their families to look at these words and hold them up and reappraise them. And that for me is, I hope, is one of the big values of the project, which means it's properly outside of the Brexit Westminster political bubble. I think that's our response to that. And certainly in terms of where we go next, I want to get lots more information like that up in Leave areas where I just don't see it getting through.
Mm-hmm. Did you have some thoughtful critics like Stephen Bush at the New Statesman, who sort of thinks that the campaign ends up helping Brexiters by amplifying misinformation, because a lot of the people who see it, and certainly the people that you're talking about, don't really sort of care about inconsistency or hypocrisy. So that line is that it's sort of self-defeating. Is that? I mean, you obviously thought this through. Was that a worry where you just thought, am I just basically publicising Nigel Farage? Or
we thought about that and we talked about it. And what we did, we put up the first suite of posters, and then one of our number, who was a photographer, went out and began speaking to local people and saying, like, what is your emotional reaction to this poster? And what we found is that people understood exactly what we were doing. They might not have agreed with us, but our faith in the British people to understand that this was satire was well founded. And I would go back to the point I was making earlier, which is, there's a limit to the number of people that see these posters in situ and really change their mind. The game for us was creating street theatre that got us coverage. And I think if you look at the coverage that we got, where we were mediating what was being said and our quotes were being provided, etc., then that's really where it broke through. And actually, I've spoken to Stephen about that, and I made that point.
So is there any way is the only way to gauge their effectiveness by talking to? So it's by if you get media coverage and the reactions of people that you're talking to.
I think there's another thing as well. We were frustrated by the extent to which these figures were doing media in January and February and weren't being asked about their previous statements. And success for us looked like Liam Fox or Michael Gove going on the Today programme or Channel 4 News and being asked about the number of trade deals we were supposedly going to sign, or we hold all the cards and that kind of thing. Now, I can't tell you what was in Emily Maitlis's mind or John Humphrey's mind where they threw those quotes back at them, or Michelle Hussein, but certainly we felt we saw an uptick in the number of times those Brexiteers were asked to account for their previous statements. And that was one of our objectives. It's not rocket science. It was incredibly frustrating to see the likes of Gove going out there saying it might be that we can't export food anymore, compared to what he'd said 3 years previously, which was, I can guarantee that Brexit will have absolutely no effect on our ability to export food. So, that poster was up outside Billingsgate Fish Market. Did the fact that it was there mean that he was asked about that? No, it's the fact that we managed to accrue 200,000 Twitter followers and managed to amplify it in kind of political commentator, anti-Brexit and Brexit Twitter, and therefore made that quote famous a little bit.
Yeah, there is that tradition, isn't it, of street theatre where it's kind of working on the street level, but it's also you're trying to change the media conversation.
Totally,
because it was certainly a maddening thing where people just wouldn't be caught. They wouldn't be called out. You'd just be saying, like, shouting at the radio, going, "Remember that thing that he said." I suppose now, actually, chaos with Ed Miliband actually became Ed Miliband's Twitter handle at one point. That's become kind of like one of the most famous tweets of the modern era.
It's on 23,000 retweets now.
Is it annoying sometimes though when they've actually said something and it's not a tweet and you have to put it in the tweet? You've got the tweet format and you have to put underneath wasn't a tweet.
No, I mean, we had a long discussion about whether we should do that, and we didn't want to be disingenuous, but we felt the tweet format was. A tweet is uncompromising, it's declarative, it's visually arresting, it's the shape of a billboard. And so we were thinking, do we have to limit ourselves to tweets, or can we use their quotes and design them up as tweets as well? Jacob Rees-Mogg tried to push back by saying I wasn't on Twitter until 2011 and therefore this is fake news. But what we found is, as long as we've put that caveat on it, I think it's fair game.
It was not a defence to say I didn't tweet it. I actually said it in the House of Commons. Fair game.
You got us.
So presumably, if we get no deal, there will be lots of billboard space available. And you said you were kind of taking a breath and then sort of planning what you were going to do next as we go into this period in which Boris Johnson is meant to negotiate a deal in 9 working days. So what can you say about how you would like to sort of expand this or kind of develop the idea?
Well, we are, there's no easy way out of this mess. I guess we are all reluctant second referendumers, and I think for us, a lot of what we want to do is keep the idea and support for a second referendum alive. I think there will be a lot we can do to attack the legitimacy of Boris Johnson through that period and beyond October the 31st, and particularly where it relates to, the issues that people really care about and are concerned about, things like the NHS. So, there's a lot we can do with that. I think some of the bits we've most liked about the campaign are where we've actually involved people and created discussions and dialogue in the street. That we did the huge banner in Parliament Square on the March to Leave. That was a great moment because it just, it involved lots of people. It was highly participative. I mentioned earlier the Jeremy Corbyn poster, but we had a lovely moment when we did that where we'd invited these activists to come and write messages to Jeremy Corbyn. We had cyclists stopping, we had truck drivers shouting out their window and hooting their horn. For a moment, we had like a real dialogue, a thing happening on Brexit in the street. And I think if we can do more to create that discussion and those moments, I think that will be a contribution. And sure, it will only be a contribution, but I'd like to think we can do some of that.
I think something I'm really interested in is attacking the legitimacy of no deal. I think we've just all accepted, in a way, that what happened between December and March, which was that Brexit became no deal. But actually, if you go back, and we're actually doing this, if you download every tweet, every speech, every quote, every radio interview, etc., by Boris Johnson between the date where he came out for Brexit and June the 23rd, 2016, he articulated, made the case for no deal precisely 0 times. And that's really important because they're claiming a mandate from the referendum for a kind of Brexit that was never mentioned. And I think, at the moment, we haven't done enough to speak to Leavers about that and make sure that people understand that a case was never made for no deal before. As Ollie said, I'm a bit of a reluctant second referendum. It took me a while to get to that position, but I think it is a democratic outrage to claim that no deal equals Brexit. And for me, that's where the mandate of a second referendum comes from.
And I think there will be a fight in the court of public opinion. So if we accept that the kind of no deal contingent is about 25 to a third of the population, and then you have about a third who's remain under any circumstances, that part of the population who is not, they don't look at the Brexit Party MEPs in Brussels and think, this is great, when they turn their backs when the Parliament opens. Those people, and I'm thinking specifically about people like my boyfriend's parents who are conservative voters, lifelong conservative voters, would never vote Labour, but now say if there's a general election, they're going to vote for the Lib Dems because they don't want a no-deal Brexit. They're not the loudest, but somebody needs to speak to them. I think there's a swing vote there that definitely is up for grabs.
Yeah.
Well, we've come to the end of the show, which means the Brexit time capsule, an infinitely capacious container which can fit almost anything inside by the use of alternative arrangements. Led by donkeys, what do you want to put in our hidden depository of things we'll miss if we ever leave the EU? Wes Streeting put Kate Hoey in there last week, so it's getting dangerous.
Well, when we were asked to think about this, it was something that we would miss or that we would need post-Brexit. So we thought it would be a book entitled 1001 Things That We Were Promised from Brexit, like an almanac. And it would be incredibly well indexed. And we would send it to all broadcasters when we opened up the time capsule, and they would look through it and be able to compare any claim about what Brexit meant in 2024 or 2025 to what was actually promised. So it would be like the sports almanac that Marty McFly had in Back to the Future 2, making him the most powerful person in town. This would make these journalists the most powerful journalists in Westminster, because they would be immediately able to challenge our Brexit overlords when they said, we are now in the sunlit uplands and it's exactly as we promised it would be.
I think you're maybe the first person who's taken the whole time capsule future concept seriously. Because obviously Kate Hoey would die in there.
And freedom of movement isn't really a physical
It's not a
object,
thing. So this is good. This has raised the bar.
Can I shamelessly add something to the box? So this, I don't know how this is going to work. I've never had a book coming out before, so this could be this is shameless and appalling, but I'm going to go with it. I want to add the Led by Donkeys book to this box as a record of what we've done, and it's out on the 31st of October, and you can pre-order it on Amazon now.
That's awesome, guys. Good work.
So what kind of book is it? Is it like a kind of big coffee table kind of?
A small kind of coffee table book. It'll be lots of pictures, lots of billboards, some of the big stunts we pulled, but it's also the story of what we did and how we pulled it off as four dads on a WhatsApp group.
It sort of starts off with Ollie and I up a ladder in Stoke Newington with David Cameron's face wrapped around us as we were trying to paste the damn thing up, not knowing what we were doing, and sort of going through to this kind of Parliament Square with a 800 square metre David Davis tweets banner with us looking up and thinking, there's two helicopters in the air. One of them is the BBC and the other is the Led by Donkeys helicopter. This has been a mad 10 weeks.
This is good. That's excellent promo. We're allowing that in. And that's the end of the show. Ben and Ollie from Led by Donkeys, thanks very much for joining us. Best of luck. Don't fall off any ladders.